A couple of days ago, Christopher Mellon, the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, had published another article on his website called, and the title is "Setting the Record Straight." And pretty much this article, he basically takes the gloves off on these people within the media, a handful of these people who have recently been writing these stupid, idiotic articles with regard to UFOs, and where it was clear that these people had no idea what they're talking about. And I've actually talked about these people and the articles, and now he's actually talking about it too, which is really nice. And he took the gloves off for this one. So we're going to go through some of this article he wrote, and I will leave the link for this so you can check it out for yourselves. He says, "I'm writing to correct the record after a series of misleading articles on the UAP issue by Hallman Jenkins Jr. of the Wall Street Journal. Specifically, I want to correct Mr. Jenkins' assertion that the UFO commotion has largely been sustained by the United States defense establishment, as well as his suggestion that interest in the UAP issue is the result of intelligence officials who think their job includes promoting false and tendentious information to the American public for their own purposes." Yeah. I mean, think about that. So this Jenkins just makes these comments like he thinks that this whole UFO thing is bogus. So any of these comments that anyone in the Department of Defense have made is these people must have ulterior motives for making these comments. But anyway, that was all phony anyway. That claim was phony. He says, Mellon writes, his claim that Department of Defense has recently found conventional explanations for most of the hundreds of UAP reported by U.S. military personnel is also dubious. First of all, it is not clear to me what commotion Mr. Jenkins is referring to, since the American press has of late been observing a near total blackout on coverage of the UAP issue. For example, last week, President Biden signed into law unprecedented legislation regarding UAP that could conceivably reveal proof of an extraterrestrial presence on Earth. Yet, not a word of this incredible bipartisan effort has been reported by any of America's leading networks or newspapers. So, to begin with, there is, if anything, a lack of UAP coverage rather than a surplus of it. So, that's exactly what I've been saying recently, right? In the past few podcasts, that's what I've been talking about, how there's no coverage. Anyway, continuing, it says, furthermore, what limited press coverage we've seen lately has been negative, seeking to belittle and discredit the UAP issue, especially the possibility that some UAP could represent alien technology. Examples of such reporting include Mr. Jenkins' recent articles on the Wall Street Journal, another op-ed in the Wall Street Journal by UAP skeptic Seth Shostak, which, by the way, Shostak is with the cultish SETI Institute, which they think they're going to get radio signals from aliens from outer space. These people are complete cultist morons. Anyway, continuing, which incidentally falsely claims astronomers never report UAP. Yeah, in that article, in that that thing from Shostak, he actually said that astronomers never report UAP. Where did he get that? He just made that up. See, these people never do any investigation in this. They just make proclamations. That's all they do. And Shostak's no different than some of these other debunkers out there. And finally, a New York Times op-ed published by Julian Barnes in October claiming that anonymous DoD officials have found explanations for most recent UAP reports. Strangely, Mr. Barnes references the 144 military UAP incidents reported in a government report delivered in June 2021. He then mentions a subsequent congressional hearing on the UAP issue in May of 2022, yet he somehow fails to mention that the DoD officials appearing at the congressional hearing reported that the number of officially reported military UAP incidents had precipitously climbed to 400 from 144 in less than a year. And Mr. Barnes and his anonymous DoD sources claiming that most of the 144 UAP incidents have been explained, or most of the let me say that again here. Are Mr. Barnes and his anonymous DoD sources claiming that most of the 144 UAP incidents have been explained, or most of the 400? Are the anonymous sources leaking information to the New York Times the same people Mr. Jenkins claims are promoting false and tendentious information to the American people for their own purposes? I cannot help wondering, since we have no other recent examples of DOD or intelligence community officials leaking UAP information to the press. In short, there is too little rather than too much commotion regarding UAP, and Mr. Jenkins has it backwards when it comes to the role of the defense establishment. One of the things that most concerns me about recent press coverage of the UAP issue is that neither Mr. Jenkins nor Mr. Barnes nor Mr. Shostak seem to have done any serious UAP research before publishing their bold claims. Let me just stop right there. That's the sentence I love the most. Because as you know, anyone who's been listening to my podcast, when I've talked about these guys, right? I've been talking about these guys a lot. Barnes, Jenkins, Shostak. They don't do any research. They don't have no idea what they're talking about. That's why I've been so upset. People wonder why I get upset. This is why I get upset. Because you have people working, writing for major publications. Shostak's article ran in Wall Street Journal, and then you have Barnes writing in the New York Times, and you have Jenkins writing in the Wall Street Journal. And so you have millions of people, millions of eyeballs reading their stuff, and they're reading articles written by people who have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to UAP. I wonder, what are the publishers and editors of these newspapers doing? To me, they're idiots, right? That's how I see it. Idiots. To allow these kind of people who have no idea what they're talking about to write about this to such a gigantic audience. That's terrible. Anyway, but that was, it was nice to see somebody of Mellon's stature, point this out. I've been pointing it out in my podcast, and it's really nice that, see somebody else saying the same thing. Anyway, continuing here, it says, in that regard, I contacted a number of military personnel involved in the Nimitz incident and other prominent military UAP cases, and learned that none had been interviewed by Mr. Jenkins, Mr. Barnes, or Mr. Shostak. Boy, who would have thought? Anyway, continuing. This is a glaring omission, since their testimony forms the basis for Congress's recent deep engagement on the issue. Also, some of these cases are responsible for the perception that some UAP are not of human manufacture. The failure to interview these important military witnesses is also a major oversight, because some of their accounts provide valid reasons to believe some UAP incidents involve technology that may not be of human origin. Let me just stop there for a second. Well, yeah, it's not of human origin. This is just a spoiler alert. It's not of human origin. There's no way, right? Some of these things are obviously not of human origin. They're alien in nature. Anyway, continuing. In the case of UAP, we have both a large number of fresh military reports in the hundreds, but we also have a considerable and growing amount of impressive data. If any of the hundreds of DoD UAP reports ultimately proves to be a probe from an extraterrestrial civilization, it is easily the biggest discovery in human history. Let me just stop right there. It is the biggest. This is the biggest discovery in human history. This discovery has already been made, and that discovery, there is evidence of this reality, and the discovery has been made by people within our government. They have this data, and they're not sharing it with the world because they think the rest of the world is a bunch of dummies and won't be able to handle this. And that's what's going on here. Something to that effect. Anyway, continuing. Currently, nobody has a conventional explanation to offer for the Nimitz case or hundreds of other U.S. military cases under review. No, there are no. Let me just stop there for a second. No, there are no conventional explanations. None. I mean, in a way, you could say there is a conventional explanation. It's extraterrestrial. Really, we need to get to. That's another thing. We need to get to a point where conventional explanations should include extraterrestrial, alien, explanations. Must be aliens. Oh, okay. It's going to be nice. Let me just stop here for a second. It'd be nice in the future someday where this is an accepted reality. You have a couple of neighbors talking. Yeah, the other night I got stung by a bunch of mosquitoes. That ain't nothing. Then the other guys are, that ain't nothing there, Butch. Me and the wife, we were abducted by aliens in the middle of the night, doing all kinds of experiments on us. Then they returned us. I was dead tired going into work the next day. And it's just like nothing, just like, the same thing as getting bothered by mosquitoes. We're getting bothered by aliens. At some point, that's what it's going to be, because we have no control over these things. I mean, really, when you really think about it, if somehow in the middle of the summer, it's a nice hot summer, right? Real humid out. Next thing you know, there's some mosquitoes getting your house because somebody left the door open for too long. You wake up with a bunch of little bumps, itchy bumps on you, right? And you realize, oh man, I was getting mosquitoes were biting on me all night, sucking out my blood. That's the same thing. That's how it is with aliens. We should be talking. It's almost the same kind of situation. Oh man, the frickin' aliens, man! You can't do anything about them. I wish there was something we could do, but hey, what are you gonna do? They show up and they take us, and we just part of life. Just like mosquitoes, or That's. We need to get to that point. That's what we're gonna get to that point someday. That's how it's gonna be. Anyway, continuing with this article here, it says. Currently, nobody has a conventional explanation of there are also hundreds of thousands of civilian UAP reports worldwide, including hundreds obtained by the military forces of countries such as France, Brazil, Chile, and Russia. Recall also that we have only just begun to ask U.S. military personnel to report their sightings, and we are only just beginning to analyze them. Naturally, most UAP reports will have conventional explanations, but it is intellectually dishonest to ignore the hard and well-documented cases that suggest we may have been discovered by others with whom we most likely share the galaxy. Well, another spoiler alert, we have been discovered by others. It's just a matter of the people who have the proof within their hands, within their grasp, within their control to present that proof to the people, and instead of stingily keeping it to themselves. Anyway, continuing with this. It says, to return to Mr. Jenkins, let there be no doubt that the defense establishment has consistently sought to downplay and avoid the UAP issue, not promote it. Amen, brother. Amen. That's true. Let me just say. For those unfamiliar with the facts, let's briefly review the history. Then he goes into a big review of the history. He talks about stuff he talks about the Air Force closing Blue Book. They've always been like this. I'm not going to read this. This is very lengthy, but I will leave the link, and I encourage you to check it out. Anyway, here's the conclusion that he comes to. It says here, this is an admittedly cursory and limited version of the recent history of the UAP issue based on the narrow window of my personal experience, but it should suffice to demonstrate Mr. Jenkins is wrong. Let me just stop there. I just want to say, yeah, Mr. Jenkins was totally wrong. Mr. Jenkins of the Wall Street Journal has no business writing about UFOs, especially to such a large audience. It's basically I would say this is a major issue for to have major news publications like the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, having people who have no idea what they're talking about, writing articles of gigantic importance, of gargantuan importance. Because believe me, UFOs, it's gigantic. The importance behind this, right? It's gigantic. It's gargantuan. There is little mainstream press coverage of the UAP issue. What little mainstream coverage we've seen lately has mostly been derogatory, and to the extent defense officials have been involved, it has been to downplay and discredit the UAP issue rather than promote it. In other words, Mr. Jenkins' commentary in the Wall Street Journal is highly inaccurate and misleading. Yes. Let me stop there for a minute. Yes, totally. I'm glad I'm not the only one saying it. I'm glad that somebody of Mr. Mellon's stature is making a comment like this. Yes, Mr. Jenkins' commentary sucked. It sucked. And the blame really goes back to the owner of the newspaper, Rupert Murdoch. Again, what are you doing? Also, let me continue here. It says, Mr. Jenkins also claims DOD has found conventional explanations for the hundreds of UAP incidents that have been identified over the last few years. These include numerous cases of Navy warships being swarmed by unidentified drone-like aircraft at sea, often for hours at a time, permitting the collection of detailed radar and optical data on the UAP. The Chinese seem logical suspects, and I will not be the least surprised if that proves to be the explanation for these incidents. But when I last checked, the intelligence community still has not confirmed a Chinese link to these incidents. Yeah, let me just stop there for a second. Okay, sometimes, obviously sometimes there's going to be some spy drones coming in from some other country like China or Russia, right? Obviously, right? But some of these objects, there's just no way, like the Nimitz incident with the Tic Tac. That's no foreign technology. It's alien technology. We don't have stuff that could move like that. Anyway, he also writes here, there have also been dozens of airspace airspace violations at DoD training ranges in recent years. In some cases, entire military exercises have been canceled or rescheduled due to the presence of unidentified aircraft operating in restricted military airspace. At last count, 11 near mid-air collisions were reported. There have also been mysterious undersea vehicles detected, reportedly traveling at hundreds of miles per hour. Meanwhile, nuclear weapons and nuclear power facilities continue to be surveilled. In sum, the Department of Defense and the intelligence community have a lot of work to do before we get a handle on the situation. Okay, I'm not going to read the rest of it. We're just going to stop there. Yes. Let me just stop. Let's just talk about this. Okay. Yes. The problem here is, that's one of the reasons they don't want to admit to this. They don't want to talk about it because they have no control over it. That's okay though. So what? You don't have control over extraterrestrials visiting here. How could you possibly? It's not your fault. You're 100 million years behind the 8 ball here, right? It's like, what are you going to do? There's nothing you can do. So what? It's going to be hard to catch up to a technology, to an intelligence that might be advanced by a million years, if not, more or less, right? So it's not I think the human race can deal with the situation, the truth of the matter, right? It's time to move on. It's time to, it's just time to get over this. And it's time for the mainstream press to start taking this more seriously. I mean, really, they've been given so much great information over the past 5 years. And look what they're doing now. They've completely dropped the ball. I'm sick of hearing about all this political horse dump kind of stories all the time. I don't care. I want more about this. This is really important. The fact that there's an extraterrestrial presence here, that's important. That's really important. That should be the big story right now. And there's enough things that have happened recently. In fact, the passing of that bill with that whistleblower protection in there, that should be a giant story. You think the press would be asking, why do we have to do this? Why did you people in Congress feel it necessary to pass that bill with that language in there? And the answer is going to be because we think there's a group within the Pentagon and/or military industrial complex that is blocking this information from elected officials. That's why. That's a big story right there. But they're not covering it. So we need to start covering this kind of stuff. The media needs to do a better job. And again, it doesn't really matter what if enough of us keep crying out about this and saying and being angry about it, then maybe something will happen as time goes on. But and maybe even if we don't, right now it does seem like there are some things happening, right? It really, this whistleblower stuff could turn out to finally bring an end to this cover up. But again, seeing is believing for me. I just don't know. I guess, a lot of people are very enthusiastic about it, but until I see it really starting to happen, then I'll believe it. I guess that's where I'm at with that one.